Good morning. Welcome back from your break. I'm Catherine Demas-Maydew, and I've been working with the nonprofit organizations for over 20 years, providing consulting in a variety of capacities. My last 2+ years have been with Bergen KDV as a business advisory director in the nonprofit and governmental channel. I am so pleased to be here and be able to share with you today a topic that I find very exciting. Ready? Let's go. First slide, please. Oh, we can pass the introductions. I'll let my rest of my speakers introduce themselves when they come up. So the agenda today, we're going to cover, that's what it is in a nutshell. Next slide. So it's the era of big data. I'm sure you've heard this already. We have data everywhere. The availability of data can confuse just about everybody, from the CEO to the board president. Organizations are accumulating large amounts and volumes of complex data. This includes customer profiles, transactions, customer and donor classifications, personal information, our purchases, credit card numbers, employee personal information, and more. With proper processes, analytic models, smart integration, and AI-powered experiences, organizations can become smarter and perform better. I'm going to challenge you on this next point. Why should only big and medium-sized businesses be the ones who have harnessed the power of data? Not-for-profit organizations of all sizes can be part of this movement too. But first, you must create a culture of analytics. If only the accounting department is asking about the data behind the new programs, the new expansion, and the growth, then we are missing out on the true purpose of data intelligence. We need the secret ingredient, a special shared mentality. A mentality mindset that recognizes that data and insights are the catalyst towards objective and efficient decision-making processes. We must share the data in order to naturally use data and insights to support decision-making and improve our organizational performance. We need to get the development team, the program team, the leadership team, and the board to come together and build this culture. One way we can help break down the barriers of sharing data is try holding brainstorming sessions and other related innovative activities amongst the leadership team. In a strong analytical culture, all members are expected to contribute to the data mining and data analytics vision and strategy. Encourage the what-if questions and challenge the, quote, do you have data to support that statement? Next slide, please. According to a recent Gartner study, by 2023, more than 1/3 of large organizations will have analysts practicing the discipline of decision intelligence, which includes decision modeling. So let me repeat that. 2023 is just next year. 1/3 of large organizations are going to have analysts on staff doing this. So why not us, right? So how do successful organizations use data as an asset to drive market differentiation and growth? Well, we're here to tell you. As nonprofit organizations, we must realize that we need more accurate contextual awareness of what data and analytical capabilities we can build to respond to the new requirements to drive growth. We, as nonprofit organizations, need to understand the key business priorities and see how data and analytics aligns with delivering business value. Don't just count clients served, count meaningful experiences. Design an agile data and analytics strategy that responds to challenging and the changing landscapes of both organizational and technology opportunities. I'm here to challenge you. Dare to dream. Give your data and analytics program a mission to transform your organization and improve the world. Let's talk about the tough questions that you get as the CFOs and the accounting staff at your organization. These questions we know can range from, what does 30% growth look like? To, what if we want to expand our programs to serve more clients? They say, can you run the numbers? They ask, what will that look like? Well, if we're living in a data intelligence model, the answer is easy. Those questions can be answered simply and easily. Data is at our fingertips already to calculate the answer. This might be built into your forecasting model that you look at each quarter. Yep, you've already developed it into your budget for next year. For not-for-profits, planning, budgeting, and forecasting must work hand in hand with data intelligence. Spend more time presenting the models and less time chasing down and crunching the numbers. I hope that I was able to convince you that you need to set up a framework, a roadmap, a data and analytics strategy. We can't afford to be left behind in the DNA, as it's called, initiatives that are taking the businesses by storm. We must be asking, why not us? So I'm going to turn it over to Laura now. She'll introduce herself, and she's going to walk you through, first we have a word. The word is discover. I'm going to write that down too, since I need my CPU too. But I'm going to turn this over now to Laura. She's going to walk you through what we at Bergen KDV have been working on that's available to help you guys get your data from dashboards, so old school, to leading analytics to help you drive the organization. Laura.
Thanks, Catherine. Good morning, everybody. Laura Gebauer, and I'm the Director of Business Intelligence and Analytics here at Bergen KDV. I've been with Bergen for just a little over a year. Prior to joining Bergen, my background's been in big corporations in accounting, finance, and treasury. So I've worked with a ton of different applications, lots of data, and Catherine hit it right on the head. There's a huge need for us to be able to pull all the different data that we have. You know, we've got the financial side with the accounting, we've got non-financial with our donors and different program funding and all different kinds of information. And organizations, I will tell you, 80% of them are not utilizing the data that they have at their fingertips because it's so hard to compile all that information in one area. And so at Bergen KDV, what we're doing is utilizing tools and applications and our financial analysts, our awesome team of financial analysts, to pair all this data together, make it easy to understand, that really allows you then to transform that data and use it for decision making, give you that big picture of what's going on in your organization. And so as you can see in this slide here, it goes from low value to high value, and then low difficulty to high difficulty. And it's a journey. We really take our clients on a journey through identifying what happened in historical. We do that through reporting. That's your descriptive analytics there. We can move forward into the diagnostic. So why did it happen? You know, now we know what happened, but why did that happen? Once we're able to answer that question, we take it one more step further into what will happen. So now we have a clear understanding of what happened, why it happened. Now, let's use that information to help predict the future. Finally, we get into the foresight, that prescriptive analytics. Okay, so now we know the story. We know what's going on. We know what's going to happen. What do we do about it? How do we utilize that information to make faster, better decisions? Next slide, please. So some of the questions that we hear on a day-to-day, and I'm sure these are questions that you all have on your end as well. So how do I focus on what's important to grow? How do you know what is needed for your organization to grow? How do I make faster business decisions? How do I know when to hire? You know, we really can look into the different data from employee turnover and all the different key drivers that go into hiring, and actually create a staffing plan so that you're ready. You know when you're going to have to add that additional accounting staff or that additional admin staff, and you can game plan for when that needs to occur. What services are generating money? What programs are generating? What ones are not? And do I have enough cash to last? You know, if everything stopped the way it was just today, would you have enough cash to make it 6 months, 12 months, 24 months? If you're not able to answer some of these questions, you need a plan. So how do we create a plan? How do we consolidate all that data? How do we have department heads be collaborative? And then how do we track the progress to our objective? We use these questions to take you on that journey through using the tools that we have and really narrow into what those key drivers are. Next slide, please. So taking your data from lagging to leading, So just some interesting metrics that I've got on here. So if you think about the time to complete an annual budget, right now without technology, so that's teams coming together, building it in Excel, doing all the work, it takes about 35 days. Within those, once you get that first draft, it takes about 5 drafts of those to get to that final approved budget. Now we have our final budget. Let's make that into our forecast model. The average time to prepare that forecast model takes 12 days. Once you have that model, it's always evolving. It's constantly changing with the evolving environments that we all have going on around us today. So to update and revise those forecasts, it takes 5 days. It's a lot of time. And we all know time is money, right? We all need more time. So with technologies such as Giraffe, which is an FP&A software that we utilize here at Bergen KDV, we can take those cycle times and cut them down by at least 50%. Next slide, please. So not your standard metrics. There's all kinds of different metrics, but how do we really know what it is we should be tracking? So some examples of some metrics in the non-for-profit world here. So fundraising efficiency, your operating reliance, your program efficiency, donor attrition, liquidity ratios. Do you have enough assets to pay off all of your liabilities? Program expenses as a percent of total expenses. As you can see, there's a pretty good list of metrics here and KPIs. So KPIs, key performance indicators. And what you get out of those, the outcome of tracking metrics, you're able to track your growth and your performance. You're able to show exactly how those funds are being used. You can also increase the impact populations that you serve, and you can make faster, more confident decisions. And some key things I want to point out on this. It's really important for your KPIs to be clearly defined, quantifiable, adaptable, right? I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier. Everything's changing really fast, evolving, so they have to be adaptable. They're crucial to achieving your organizational objectives. They're practical and actionable, and they also provide incentives for your staff. Next slide, please. Well, now I'll turn it over to Jason, and he's going to talk about some additional tools that we utilize here to transform the data and looking at some what-if scenarios. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. So my name is Jason Greer. I am a business advisor here at Bergen KDV, and I've been in the industry of kind of big data and lean consulting for about 20 years now. What I'm going to talk to you about is a few different ways to use data that really kind of correlate also with what Laura just mentioned. Not too long ago, we had a client come to us, a nonprofit client, and they had an opportunity to grow their business. And it was probably going to grow somewhere in the 30 to 40% over the next couple of years. They had some people on their leadership team that were suggesting they needed to grow staff and buy more assets and really grow their business, and others that were questioning whether or not we should let the revenue come in and then make decisions. And so we kind of settled on one of three ways that we could kind of model through what that would look like on maybe a 5-year horizon. And so we went with a Monte Carlo simulator. Now, before we get too deep into that conversation, I want to ask you a question. How long did it take you to drive to work today? Now, I know there's a lot of hybrid people, but on any given day, what does it take to drive to work? Now, whenever I ask this question, sometimes people will say, okay, well, it takes me about 17 minutes. My next question is, every time? It's not the way it works, right? There's a lot of variables that go into something as simple as your drive to work. It could be the number of lights that you hit red, the lights that you hit green. If we were to look and kind of map out those times, you would see, as we look at kind of that normalized distribution below, if we were to map out all those times across maybe let's say a year, 68% of the time, you're going to be getting to work somewhere between 14 and 20 minutes, right? We've got this a little bit of variation. But if you want to go ahead and click for me, whoever's running, so there we go, and one more time. But then there's also these situations that are unexpected, right? And we have to take into account those situations as well. So as we start to look at the different processes and even cash flow, revenue generation, all the different ways that we manage our business, we have to look at the good and the bad, right? And with COVID on everybody's mind, we can certainly see that there's a lot of things that we just don't expect and we have to sometimes prepare for. So in some situations, you know, if we go back to the driving the car analogy, maybe it's a train crossing, and every once in a while, every 50th day, you get stuck behind a train and you wait an extra 15 minutes. I'm going to hit the button for me. And then every once in a while, let's say you're on call and you get called at 3 in the morning. All the servers are gone down. You drive 90 miles an hour all the way there. And who knew, but you can make it in 9 minutes. There's a lot of variation that goes into what we do, as simple as driving to work, but in every process that you have in your organization. So if we go back to the conversation around with that client, they were trying to figure out, when do we spend money? And what is our cash flow going to look like for the next 5 years? Let's say we ramp up staff by 30% now. What does that do to our cash flow, even if revenue is coming in and does expand over the next 3 years? So what was very fascinating for them, it was enlightening for them, they were able to then come to some conclusions. Now, what this Monte Carlo didn't do is it didn't say, here's the golden answer, this is exactly how you react. Instead, what happened was the leadership team took to the board something similar to the chart you're seeing down below. We are 68% confident that these things are going to happen to us in the next 2 to 3 years. And if we believe that, then here is the recommendation that we're making, right? There is no, as we look at this type of prediction, and any type, I would say, there's nothing that's going to say this is exactly what's going to happen. But we can use the past as an indicator, and Monte Carlo simulators are a great way to do that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I have been a lean consultant and facilitator for about 17 years now, and one of my very favorite exercises to do with clients is what I call a spaghetti diagram. You can find them out on the web. Everybody uses them. But it is a way for us to help clients understand what they're measuring. So if we look at, let's use an example, and I'm going to give you a little bit of homework. So next time you go buy coffee, instead of going through the drive-thru, I want you to go inside. And I want you to order from the barista, and I want you to count their steps. And I want you to watch them as they work through getting your coffee or whatever you may order together for you. And as we go through that, you're going to see this kind of movement of process all through the facility as they go get a cup, as they go get the coffee, as they get the lid, as they get the foamed milk or whatever it may be. All those things come together. And the same thing happens in your organization. This could happen because it's sitting in a spreadsheet somewhere. It could be that we have to hand it off and get an approval from someone else, and it sits somewhere or in an inbox for a day and a half. Every one of those things ties back to one of these stops that you see in the spaghetti diagram, right? This widget that we're creating, or this widget that we're moving through our process, is making stop after stop after stop throughout the organization until it gets to a point where it's actually valuable to us or valuable to our customer. And so as we start to capture this idea, think about this from a data perspective. If we were to understand the flow of how things work, could we produce and create a better process? Could we become more efficient? And so this is a great exercise. And please don't forget to do the homework. Actually, it will drive you a little crazy because you can see it everywhere you go. But pay attention. If you would go to the next slide. All right, we've got a CPE word here. All right, next slide. So Laura was talking about this also from a leading and lagging indicator. So what I did is I pulled up just a basic process through HubSpot as they talk about a sales funnel. So this could be how we sell and find new volunteers. It could be how we find new donors. It could be how we find customers, right? Any way that we go out and reach out to the community and try to sell ourselves. And so if you look from the left to the right, this is kind of the process steps that we go to, all the way to the right-hand side of closing that deal. And so as Laura was talking about this from a financial aspect and a few others as well, we can bring this to every process, right? And so as we look through the things that we're doing and how we're interacting, and if you go back to the coffee example, let me ask you a question. How many of those steps were you willing to pay for whenever you bought the coffee? Would you have bought the coffee if there were an extra 100 steps, if it was the same price? If it was 0 steps, would you expect there to be a different price? I don't think so, right? You didn't go there to buy steps. You went there to buy coffee. And so a lot of times what happens is we measure the wrong things. In an organization, it's very easy, in this example, to measure closing, right? So how many deals did we close? If you want to hit the slide for me. And so we can look at how we close the deal, but what happens if it doesn't meet our expectations? What if closing is down, right? And at that point, if all we've done is measure the closing, then we have no way to react and figure out what to do. So data is all about action, in my opinion. And so if I put a chart in front of you and I ask you if this chart goes up or if this chart goes down, what are you going to do about it? And you literally have no answer for me, then that chart is probably not worth looking at. That information is not valuable, or you don't understand the value of it. And so as Laura talked about, going back from a lagging indicator like a close back into the steps of, maybe it's the number of cold calls you made. Maybe it's how you interacted with that customer. Did you take them out to lunch or did you just do a call? All the different ways that we can start to measure process and understand how do we create value for that customer so that they feel engaged with us and continue through the process all the way to closing. So if you think about data and as you think about all the processes in your organization, there's so many different ways to try to connect and better understand how do we create value. And I really think at the end of the day, that's what data is all about, is helping us understand the world and inside of an organization, where is that value being created? Thanks for your time today, and I'm going to ask we move to the next slide. All right. Any questions?
Did have a couple. Thanks a lot for that, Jason, here. One that came up kind of in regards to that Monte Carlo simulator here, I think. Can I do that Monte Carlo graph in my basic version of Excel?
Yes, you can. So I'd be happy to help with that, but if you just do a Google query, you will find, just type in Excel Monte Carlo. There are a few add-ons that you can pull in and use. I will say that they're sometimes they can be complicated, so try out a couple different ones, but there are ways to do it. The basic idea behind a Monte Carlo is it takes all the variables that you've put in place, and then it runs that simulation 5,000 times or any number of times to help build that graph of what could happen inside of an organization or inside of a process. Good question.
Thank you. And the next one, this could go to Catherine or Laura. I think this is a little more in the data analyst part of this. I'm not a financial analyst, but as an accountant, how do I know what to measure? And Catherine or Laura, if you're still there, if you want to pop back on.
I'm perfect. I'll let Laura start. How's that?
Yes. So as we mentioned earlier, the metrics and the key performance indicators that you're looking at really need to play into your objective. What's your mission statement? What are we trying to, are we trying to grow a certain program by X%? Then we really need to dig into what those key drivers are. And we start, kind of mentioning the client journey we discussed. So we really start looking at historical through the financial data. And throughout that process, we may start with one question: what program is generating the most funds? Well, throughout that process, we may identify 5, 6, 10 other questions just by looking at the financial data. And so we really got to start there. That builds your foundation. We drill into the key drivers, and then we spin up the KPIs and the metrics that really will allow you to track your performance for the question that we're trying to answer.
Yeah, so I would piggyback to what Laura just said. You've got to first develop your data and analytical strategy. So you got, like we said, and like Jason said, you got to know what you want to measure. So what are your outcomes and what are your goals you're expecting? Then you can turn around and dig, like Laura's saying. So without having the players come to the table and put together a strategy on that, you don't know what to look at. You're going to be looking at everything. You're going to be running around like a chicken with your head cut off if you don't build the strategy. So don't allow the data to rule you. You rule the data. So come forward as a group and decide what is important. And it may be that it's like this month it's this quarter it's this quarter it's that, and we're going to build it so that we eventually get to the full measurement capabilities that we can, because you can't measure everything at once. It's like, I'm sure Laura will tell you, it's like drinking from a fire hose. You can't just do that. You can't just pull all the data together and then say, what do I got? You've got to start with that plan. So it's a strategy. It's just like your strategic plan for the organization. How important is that? This is the same thing. Sit down, have a real meeting, have a conscientious decision, bring leaders together, bring the players together and say, what is our data and analytical strategy, right? And then develop that culture of analytics. Great question.
Awesome, great info. Thanks a lot for that. I did get a question. I don't know if Jason read it aloud here, but that last CPE word through this session here was management. If you didn't catch that or forget to write that one down. And with that, we're going to kick it off to our next session here on the employee retention credit. Thanks a lot, guys.